We're good. Hmm. Member friendly fire coordinates. Holy crap! I can turn it to on to always day.
Heck
It's
yeah.
always daytime now. Would you look at that? There's a cow on this ledge. Boom, ba-ba-boom. How's our stream looking, Vast? Boop.
I am going to YouTube. I got my Lappy Tappa open.
Lappy tappy.
And we are DerNami.
Yes.
Hope that's still the case.
Merp. Looks like we're live.
We are live, physical distance. All right, I'm going to ask everybody to say something
Mic
once,
check.
twice.
This is the lovely sound of my voice. This is the lovely sound of my voice.
I ate a Gouda and white cheddar cheese grilled cheese for dinner today. Delicious.
Most excellent.
All right, guys, we sound good.
Yay!
Oh, what I
Sweet.
should do is actually open up the thread.
Oh, yes, that's true. You are in charge of the list.
I like making lists.
That's not a bad thing. Somebody has to do it, or
It
else.
is how you coined the nickname Listmaster.
Yep.
That's me. All right,
I mean,
thread is up.
if not for you, jackwagons like me would just be listless and rambly, you know?
You know, meander,
Yeah.
aimless, no rhyme or
Lots
reason,
lots of
ADD
digression.
detached. Yes.
Anyway, it's podcast. We've lost count of how many of these we've done. And we are coming to you live from the capital of three different places in DNG-topia where we've all physically distanced ourselves from each other. And
Physically distanced.
physically, we are socially together.
Yeah, I don't really like the phrase social distancing
Yeah.
because that implies like when someone says, "Hey, keep your social distance," I'm like, I'm not talking to you, therefore I'm keeping my social distance.
In
I don't
case
think they
there's
understand
anyone,
what social distancing is
yeah,
versus physical distancing,
in
so I
case
find
there's
it funny.
anyone that is watching this in the far-flung future, we are referring to the great coronavirus pandemic of 2020 that we are currently living in. It is the end of March, and
Yep,
people are freaking
these
out.
are the times we live in.
Oh, yes.
Hmm.
But anyway, I'm joined by Arcadia Zero and Vast Empires, and I am Scorch, and we have a few things to talk about. Our list isn't huge today, but there are a few things that we could go off on, I think. And
Hmm.
I'll give control of the floor over to Vast Empires, who can lead with the list.
All right. So first things on the list, because this has been about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks since we last podcast. So there's a lot of gaming news that we can dive into, and we are a little bit late for covering one of our bread and butter console systems, the PS5 reveal. So that's where I'm going to start. The PS5 initial reveal was scheduled for GDC, the Gamers Day Conference. However, that was canceled this year due to coronavirus concerns. Um, and so instead, PlayStation decided to do a virtual conference to release some of the specs and some of the information behind the console. And it kind of landed with a thud for the public audience, not the intended trade show audience. So
Yeah.
let's start there and give our thoughts.
So, out of the gate, I'm gonna have to say that what they gave us was kind of dry, and it was specifically for GDC, their presentation, and their presentation was for game designers. It's the Game Designers Conference, so it wasn't super flashy. It wasn't really for a civilian audience.
It's
It
very meat
was,
and potatoes.
yeah, it was very much a spec kind of. They like emailed everybody a spec sheet, pretty much,
Yeah.
and people immediately, as they do, started comparing it to the Xbox One X that's coming out. I believe that's the name of it. And there's some concern around that.
I think the biggest part of concern comes with the difference between the 10 and 12 for, oh gosh, what is it? No,
Are we
I
talk?
lost.
Is this where we start to get to talk about gigadutes or whatever?
Yes, those things.
Yeah, the teraflops.
Teraflops. Thank you. I lost what it was.
So many flops.
Yeah. So, do we want to go over like what a teraflop is? Do you think that would be handy information?
Maybe.
Or do we just
I
want
mean,
to
we can
Flop
do.
say,
I think we can
stands
do that
for
quickly.
floating point operations per second.
yep,
So it's basically the number of individual little steps, either in a calculation, a resolution, or what have you, whenever the processor performs a operation to a completion to the next singular operation, that is a flop. Teraflops is
that is
exactly,
a trillion flops per second. It's
yes.
to the 12th power, if
And
anybody's
if you
keeping
get
track.
to petaflops, that is another order of magnitude.
Petaflops.
So basically, what they're saying is, holy smokes, is this thing Einsteining its way through its calculations?
um, and at this point in time, we know that the Xbox One X features 12 teraflops, while the PlayStation 5 features 10 teraflops.
But one of the distinguishing features that I do remember them saying differentiated the PlayStation from the Xbox was the GPU sharing algorithm that Xbox does not advertise as having, whereas PlayStation does.
Yeah. Another thing that PlayStation is really, really pushing is the speed of their SSD, which
Yes.
can definitely make a difference when you're talking about things like load times and,
Well, it actually makes a
how.
world of difference. So this gets
Yeah.
into sort of a technical comparison to DDR series RAM. And when your hard drives essentially approach some of the similar speeds of your, I guess what now we're in the DDR4 generation of RAM
hmm
for,
hmm
quote, high spec computing. Um, Usually the hard drive is simply storage and the RAM is what's truly executing all of your um, current operations, whether it's from a disk or from a hard drive, and it is pulling it out and crunching all the numbers, and that's what's really playing the game is from memory. The more memory you have, the faster everything goes of what's limited, obviously by the CPU. The CPU has a certain limitation that it can divvy out to RAM, and once that limit's exceeded, you're CPU limited instead of RAM limited. But that's a pretty big number. So what they're trying to essentially advertise is because our solid state drive is so fast, it is almost equivalent to having nothing but RAM, but you're still storing it in a solid state media and not RAM media. So they're essentially trying to say we're we're basically faster than Xbox because it feels like you're running off of pure RAM. But you do have a hard drive there. It just happens to be nearly as fast as the RAM paired with it.
And that's pretty nice, when you're sitting there. in Borderlands near the host and you load in first and you have to wait like 10 or 12 seconds for your friends to, stop loading also
Yep.
because,
Yep.
that is a thing. And
Well, technically, just inter-game area transitions when you load from one area
yeah.
to another, and you have to sit there for anywhere from 5 to 15 seconds.
Oh,
It'll
dude.
probably be more like 2
Dude,
or 4.
listen, I built me a PC and it's got like 2 terabytes worth of solid state in it. I know the difference.
Yeah. Well, speaking of load times, I know that in one of the other stories that we saw reported, I think it was Games Radar or Kotaku, excuse me. This one I don't actually have on the list, but I'm citing both because I know it was from one or two. They were saying that in a recent investment call that Sony is really reportedly telling developers that are comparing the new load times that people will experience in PlayStation 5 will be comparable to picking something and then loading it up on Netflix to watch, and in terms of speeds. Um,
Which is kind of a hard comparison because even that varies depending on what you're doing.
Yeah.
yes, but I'm sure it's an investment call. Investment calls mean various levels of people and
Yeah,
technical
you have to
know-how, so
equate
I'm
it to
sure
something that they are familiar with.
familiar with. So I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that was like, something that someone came up with on the fly, but it is, probably part of their like, sales pitch, their elevator pitch about,
We
how
be
do we get
as
this
fast
across?
as we be as fast as Netflix, y'all. And they're like, "Oh,
Hmm.
yeah, I have Netflix." Oh.
I know
That's
what that
fast
is.
to me.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But basically the idea is that you can just jump right in instead of, waiting the 30 seconds to 2 minutes it takes to like load in,
Yeah.
depending on the size of game and your
But
internet connection, all that kind of
really,
stuff.
for the kind of operations that they're getting at, it's not just the load times. That's one of the more tangible aspects of telling how much faster it is because you can sit there and time it. But what they're not able to truly gauge is graphics resolutions, graphic
Oh.
speeds. All of these floating point operations, they're not just exclusive to the GPU, they're also for the CPU. It's the whole system working together. So, what it's not going to tell you is just how fast and more efficiently will a game render in normal play, as opposed to, what we currently have.
Yeah. That's
Now,
true.
wasn't there a news story somewhere about either Microsoft or Sony purchasing a company that had the technology that, you know what, I'm actually going to stop this right here because it's going to be a really rambly, confusing half
Okay.
stated idea.
All
But
right.
there's a news story out there that I'm going to look for eventually and bring it back.
Okay. Well, now that we've thoroughly pushed up our glasses and like nerded the fuck out of this, do you want to go off on GameStop for a little bit?
Wait, wait,
Oh my
wait, wait.
gosh.
Real quick, real quick. I do have a question.
Okay.
About the PS5 reveal. We already said we knew that this was a dry technical reveal because it was for the Gamers Day conference. It was for the people who are actually in the technical know-how of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
But Sony's marketing team probably worked like a year to prepare their PlayStation 5 rollout for 2020. But my question is, should PlayStation have revised this because it was going to be immediately accessible to the public and made it more public friendly, or were they fine with just keeping it as is?
I think they just left it because they wanted to get the news out there, and more importantly, right now, obviously, it is important for people to know about the new stuff that comes out because that's obviously who's doing the purchasing. They have the purchasing power. But what they're really trying to, I think, step up first is to get the developers on board with what they're doing so they can go, yeah, actually, that is more preferable. Because when you get developers on your side, that means you get more games in play. When you get more games in play, the consumers have more options. If they see a console that has a 3-to-1 game provision ratio, it's going to sway a lot of decision making. So what they're trying to do, in my opinion, is a long game plan where they'll get the groundwork going on the developers first, and they don't have to be real extravagant. Then they'll focus market attention while they know everyone's basically sitting at home with this COVID stuff,
Oh
and
yeah.
rebundle it in a form factor that is easier for consumers to digest and has the bits of information that they're looking for that developers don't necessarily care about. They'll use all the fancy buzzwords that they want, and that, I think, is their intention.
Yeah. And something should be said too about the people that are worried a little bit about the apparent lack of power that the PlayStation 5 seems to have versus the Xbox One X. Pure raw power doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win this generation's console war.
No, it's how you
Um,
balance that power. How is it
in
utilized?
in play when I'd like us all to think back to when we were in high school and college, when the console war was currently sitting at PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. The Xbox 360 was a weaker machine in terms of specs. If you just sat there and took a look at the Xbox 360 package versus the PlayStation 3 package, you would think that the PlayStation 3 would be victorious, especially since it had a Blu-ray drive, which the Xbox 360 did not.
And that was big in the day
And
because
that
Blu-rays
was,
were very much still kind of in their genesis, so to speak, for the consumer. They
yeah,
weren't in the genesis of industry, but just readily right there in the living room have a Blu-ray player, like that was a big deal.
yeah, it
Hmm.
definitely was. And the Xbox was pretty dominant in that era, and you could think of it multiple ways. Affordability was one thing. If you jam pack a machine full with more stuff, it's going to be more expensive. And that was a definite deciding factor in a lot of people. Well, the Xboxes this round is cheaper than the PlayStation 3, and I know that swayed a lot of people. Another thing that people had to think about was the video game library because the 360 library was pretty good compared to the PlayStation 3 one.
Yeah.
And those two things combined, the price point and the game library, are definitely going to be things to look at
But
when,
again, you brought up library size, and the only way you get a bigger library size is if developers make games for
yep,
it.
that's true.
Hence why they care about catering to the developers right now more so than the general audience.
And here's another thing that we have to think about. I know we need to move on eventually, but
No, 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 no. Keep going because I actually have something. But keep
okay.
going.
The the PlayStation 4 has firmly grasped the victory in this generation.
Amen.
And that means that everybody is currently in Sony's PlayStation ecosystem, which means they already have a base of people that are already invested in the next generation because all of their games are there. So the way that you can think about it is you don't necessarily have to come out with the craziest, most jaw-dropping machine when you know people are already gonna buy it anyway. Like that's why friggin' Starbucks has two stores on every block. People are gonna buy it. You
God
know
Yep.
what I
damn it,
mean?
Starbucks.
Yep. Well, I just wanted to slow our transition down into the Corona coverage by having a linking topic, which is we were talking about having the games library, how plans are changing with the COVID-19 pandemic,
Hmm.
and such. And this kind of leads me to a news story that I saw the other day, which is that Microsoft has seen demand for all of their cloud services, which includes Xbox Live, soar by 775%.
Yeah.
In what time period, though?
Um,
Because that number will be skewed if it's only within the last month or two because of the COVID stuff.
Well,
yes,
that's
but
specifically
that's
what we're
exactly it.
talking about.
That's
Oh, okay,
specifically
okay,
what we're
okay.
talking about.
Yeah.
So So this is just about bringing more people into Xbox's ecosystem because people are working from home, which everyone knows this is very, very difficult to resist that temptation to just flip that console on. Or if you're like me and you have a laptop on one side of your desk that's for work, and then on the other side of your desk there's a laptop that's for fun. Just have both of your laptops open, and you might play Tim for an hour. Who knows? Who knows how that happens? But it is bringing more people into the Xbox ecosystem, and right now, from all reports, Xbox is actually killing it with their live service and bringing more games into their live service,
Yeah.
allowing for the cross-platforming between the console and the PC. So there's a case to be made that uh, people are enjoying it, and that this might actually bring Xbox a little bit closer to at least winning the public opinion on the value they're going to bring in. And oh God, I can't believe I said that. That sounds so much work. It sounds like I'm talking to somebody at work, but the value they're going to bring to you within the next console generation.
Yeah, definitely. I've heard from
All
quite
right.
a few people that Xbox Game Pass is definitely the most bang for your buck right now when it comes to offerings per price point.
Mm-hmm. It's happening right now. Just bringing you news to keep you through it. But the first, or excuse me, the second on this list is GameStop.
Ooh, GameStop.
And there's a
Being
lot to talk about in GameStop land.
being dinguses.
Hmm.
Corporate dinguses.
I'll let you guys take this one because there's a lot
Whew.
here.
So
Arcadius, you want to
recently
go?
there was
Yeah.
a YouTuber that actually managed. I cannot. His name escapes me right now. I might be able to switch over and actually look for it here. There is a YouTuber who has already released several videos in the past about his own GameStop experiences because he worked at the company for I think over a decade. It was his high school job transition to normal job, if I'm remembering correctly here. And somehow, somewhere, he managed to obtain the number for a corporate call-in between the head of stores, HR, and essentially every single store head, which would be a lot of people. So you can imagine how much this would ripple out. This isn't just a few people then told a few people to no. This is head of GameStop stores and their HR department. And essentially, what transpired was the most corporate, cringy responses to normal and rightly so cautious questions that the store managers were trying to ask in terms of what do we do about trade-ins? Do we pause those for now? And essentially the hem haul answer was, no, we're still taking trade-ins. Just, if you're concerned about someone bringing something in infectious, just tell them to come in another day. As if, to quote the YouTuber, as if the virus takes a vacation over the weekend or something like that. And the most common response was, well, we're still talking about that. We're taking it day by day, and so they would never directly answer yeses or nos to anything, even very reasonable questions of, are employees going to still get paid something if GameStop shuts its stores down? And what the HR person ended up saying was she flipped that conversation and spun it to say, well, if an employee chooses to not come in, then they will not get paid. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Hold on, back up. We talked about corporate closures, not someone electing, oh, I don't want to get sick, so I'm not coming in. But that's besides the point on a whole nother issue of how are they not emotionally responsible enough to see the situation as it is and go, maybe I, one, shouldn't contribute to a pandemic spread, and two, should probably keep away my employees away from a pandemic spread. and it's lost on them. Like when you listen to this, I can't do the whole summary of the video justice. It's like a 40-minute video. And when you're listening to this, you're angry and baffled at the same time that they would hem haul around, and the sum of the call is, well, we're still going to keep chugging along. The corporate people will stay at home, but you guys need to stay in the store and keep making money and keep pushing product. So
Mm,
it
hmm.
was really shallow from a morality standpoint of what some responsible corporate heading should be doing right now. And quite frankly, they should be following in the footsteps of just about every other company who's trying to treat this with utmost seriousness, and they are not. Now, shortly after this video release, it made its way around the internet a little bit, and then GameStop had no choice but to start mass closing stores. Now, some of them closed permanently, and some of them closed purely due to the virus. So their hand was forced when they received enough negative PR about their decision-making process. And so they were forced by the public to essentially start closing and start trying to look like they're acting responsibly, but really they're still not. The stores are still running, they're still open full steam. I think one management wing in Pennsylvania tried to classify themselves as essential,
The
and the
entire
governor of
GameStop,
Pennsylvania.
the all of GameStop across the entire United States tried to classify themselves as essential
Oh, the
retail.
the article I read early on was only in Pennsylvania, so this
Well,
was a microcosm, I guess, before it
the
expanded out.
reason
Then,
why it gained traction in Pennsylvania was because the governor of Pennsylvania revoked their business license to operate in the state.
yes, that's why. So yeah, I
Mm.
thought that was kind of clever. So no more GameStop for Pennsylvania, which I
I
thought
mean,
was like some sweet justice.
Well,
it's
also California. This was a couple weeks ago, like mid-March, but California, um, or excuse me, GameStops in California were being closed until further notice. Um, and I think uh, it had something to do with or excuse me, I'm sorry, it had something to do with the um, California governor's office. I don't know if they actually issued like a writ to them, if they revoked their business license, but you know,
Hmm.
something happened in California where all of GameStops were reportedly to close middle of March.
Hmm.
dang. I know the deal. There was a deal in California. I know there was a deal in Pennsylvania, but since then, uh, GameStop across the board has closed, and they are now using this closure, this pandemic closure, to permanently shutter at least 300 stores.
Which
And
is a
for
lot. That's not a small number.
for reference, GameStop, who has been tanking for the last forever, um, had closed a total of 300 stores all of last year. So they closed as many stores in the first 3 months of this year as they did all of 2019.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot.
That is
It is a
quite
lot.
a lot. It makes you wonder uh, if Reggie Fils-Aimé is going to be staying on their board of directors for very long
For
with
those of you who
this.
are not in the know, when Reggie left Nintendo, he took a little break, and then it was recently announced that he was joining GameStop.
Yeah.
They undoubtedly brought him on because he is a person that sort of knows what he's doing, and they want someone with magic to just revitalize their company, even though that's not
Well,
sort of how it works, or how they believe it works. But I'm not even sure if I was Reggie, I would want to be associated with GameStop, to be honest. But that's just
I'm
me.
I'm sure they offered him buku bucks to
Oh, I'm sure they did,
do that,
which
and
is kind of
they,
funny for the situation they're in to go and offer buku bucks.
yeah, and they wanted somebody that was genuinely liked in the community, and Reggie does a pretty good job of being a likable person.
True,
So,
true.
yeah, I mean, it was a logical step for a floundering, you know, useless company. We can soon throw their corporate bodies onto the pyre just like Sears, but, you know, and
Yeah.
Blockbuster.
Oh, poor
Oh man.
Blockbuster.
we're gonna have that serious conversation though, because not now, but that serious conversation is hard because like
Strike
they
home.
employed a lot of
It,
people
They
they
did.
did.
They really did. And they were a big deal for the United States for a very, very long time.
for a
Mm-hmm.
very long time. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. In my junior
Another day.
historian, like whatever, I've been taking notes about the importance of Sears as a blah 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 blah. But we won't get into that. I don't want to give you my doctoral paper ideas.
This is my thesis on the importance of Sears through the 20th century in the United States of America.
I'm just saying, I got a lens that we can focus through. I
Oh,
got a
yeah.
paper idea, guys. Anyway, next on the list, just really quickly, we'll touch it briefly because we don't just talk about games here. We also talk about different media. That since the pandemic has hit, a lot of different film studios have either pended their big releases like Mulan and Disney, or they have moved their film releases to streaming services for rental or purchase, immediate rental or purchase, as opposed to like the usual, what is usually like 3-month wait between theater release before it gets to the platforms.
Yeah, something like that.
So, in the face of our future changes from the pandemic, cinema has been, back and forth on the line. Is it dead? Is it dying? What can we do? Where can we go? Is cinema dead? Long live streaming services now?
Hmm.
And by
Well,
cinema, I don't mean the actual film industry. I mean the actual movie theaters themselves.
yeah. Um, I know, and this is going to get into a whole philosophical and artistic discussion about what is a film and where should you enjoy a film and where do the directors and all the people that work on a film suggest that you watch their stuff because some things are truly better in the cinema. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, part of it's part of to me personally. Part of the movie experience is going to the theater, and it's important for me for big films, but it was never more apparent how much I enjoyed that part of it until I moved to New York and being in an audience that maybe wasn't as genteel and polite, and how much fun that experience was, especially like when I saw the more recent Star Wars films. It had been such a long time since I saw a movie and people clapped like when they got to the end. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but that was something that I felt was really common when I was younger. Like I remember going to see like one of the I was little bitty, like I was really young, but I remember going to see one of the Back to the Future films with my mom. I think it was the third one because that's the one with the train, right?
I
I'm going
don't
to say
think
yes.
that's totally a wash.
But I remember people clapping at the end of that. So it's just like, not necessarily people who talk through all the film, because I'm not about that. But I do like having those reactions when it's funny and people laugh, or when it's sad and you hear someone like struggling to hold back tears. That's part of the movie experience to me. And I'll be perfectly honest to you, when I'm at home, I am 100 times less likely to watch a movie than I am to watch a TV show.
Mm.
Okay. Okay.
That's just me.
Yeah. Well, if you and no one's asking, but I'm gonna give my opinion anyway.
Please do.
Uh, anyone like actively participating in the showing of a movie at a movie theater sounds like an absolute nightmare to me that I would never want to be in. As a
Well,
guy who tends to be in public a quiet, reserved person, that sounds like the epitome of a nightmare. I
you know
would
what?
if somebody jumped up in the movie theater and was like, "Yeah, Boba Fett," I would walk out. Like that sounds awful.
I think I honestly think that's like the cultural thing, and that's what I think that's what I was driving at when I said like a genteel movie thing versus like people clapping in the theaters. And not that I've lived everywhere in the United States, but I have lived on both coasts and in the center of it, and now in the south of it. And a southern audience is like going to church in a theater.
Oh,
And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean like it's very quiet and reserved, and unless you're going to a film with kids in it, like it's very quiet and reserved. And I've even went to like a concert. You know what? The concert was at the Ryman Theater, which has pews in it. Um, but but the artists were like everyone there was like it was like plenty of age variation. It was I don't even remember which band it was, but it was a rollicking kind of band. And for like the first half of it, nobody stood up at the concert. We were all in our pews.
wow. Okay, listen, a concert is different.
Mm.
You need to
I'm just
be up
saying,
and moving for a concert.
I agree, and people eventually got up. I just think that it's like, I honestly do think it's just like a cultural difference. Like when you're sitting down in front of an audience, or excuse me, in front of a entertainer, you're like, entertainment, you are quieter down south. Not all the time, not everywhere,
Yeah.
but that's just been my experience.
And it might be also that I'm just a bad person to ask because I've legitimately thought about, okay, how can I get to see this movie in matinee? How many people will be there? And can I buy every single seat so it's just me in the movie theater? So,
Is this
so
currently financially feasible?
yeah,
No?
exactly.
Okay.
Do I have money to
Prepare
do
to
this?
grit teeth.
Yeah. Oh, there's somebody sitting 5 rows behind me. Fuck.
I can feel their presence.
Oh, it's awful.
Yeah, but if anyone like wants to chime in on this, whoever watches and sees this, because I'm really curious about how how this is changing people's media consumption habits and what people think of movies coming directly to your home, like
Yeah.
immediately instead of you having to go to the theaters to see it.
I have one thing we can talk about that
Go ahead.
wasn't on the list. So, I'm attempting to be a good friend with a lot of people that I don't necessarily live in the same town with, friends from college and all of that. And I've been checking in with friends and making sure that they're okay, talking to them through all of this and, just generally trying to be a beacon of sanity in these somewhat insane times. And multiple friends have actively told me, "Oh, I was never that much of a gamer. I'm not much of a gamer, but I have Steam now because that's a thing that I can do at home." And
Mm.
I was wondering if you two had any suggestions for first-time gamers that are bored from quarantine and are just sitting there.
I mean, that's not even something I have, but I am aware that Steam is basically an open book of just about any kind of game you want to play.
Yeah, but
So
like,
basically, tell them crack open the Steam and just start combing it through genres that you would be interested in playing.
but
And if
but
you don't know, just
Arcadius,
start going through. I mean,
Arcadius,
I don't even
that's
know.
that's not really the question I answered or I asked.
Sounded like it.
What what would you recommend to a first-time gamer? That's my question.
Hmm. I don't know,
Really?
because it would
Well,
depend
I
on
have a
the kind of games
recommendation.
that they might want to play.
What is it, Vass? Let's hear it.
My recommendation right now would be if you like a cinematic experience, you like a strong story, um, you like good storytelling, and you're looking for that in a game, Horizon Zero Dawn.
Ooh,
Hmm.
that is a very good
Horizon
game.
Zero Dawn.
It is freshly on Steam, I believe,
Oh, did
which is
not
pretty
know this.
nice. That is a good pick.
Cannot speak highly enough about that game.
It's a very good game.
It's a very good game. And it's got a little bit of a hopeful message in there. I think it's got a really good story.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually kind of timely in a way that's not as scary as, say, The Division. And
Yeah, the Division right now might give some people the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't had that conversation. That's who took the Division's plan and started this? But that's
So,
that's our tin hat episode.
what in the Division 1, what is the timeline
Christmas.
for the dollar flu? I know it's Christmas, but was it like Christmas 2019? Because it came out in 2016, I believe.
That's some coincidence right there.
No, it came out in spring of. Was it 2016 or was it 2017?
One of those.
Oh, I have no idea.
It was one of those, though.
Back when the world was a different place.
All those many years ago.
Yeah.
Let's see. Something. You know what? I think I would do feel comfortable if you're a gamer who liked Pokemon but got out of the Nintendo ecosystem over the years, and you are on Steam. I would recommend Temtem.
Yeah, Temtem is a pretty good, what do I want to say? Stand-in for the lack of Pokemon on PC?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It follows the formula really closely, but it has an upgraded or evolved combat system.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You're always
Which
fighting
is
doubles, and type difference matters a lot more in Temtem than in Pokemon. So, I have one that would probably appeal to the non-gamer gamer that I myself have never played. And that
what?
is Stardew Valley
Oh.
because it's easily edible. It doesn't require a ton of thought. There aren't any hugely complicated mechanics, and there's a lot to do in the game. It's simple. It's something that somebody can pick up immediately and have fun with.
I like that. You know what? I have. So I was talking to my dad the other day, and my dad is in a nursing home. For anyone who's listening and didn't know that, but he was telling me that he and his nurses were talking about how she just recently got Animal Farm, and that game. They haven't released the sales numbers for it yet, but I understand that it is like.
Are you talking about Animal Crossing?
Did I say Animal Farm?
Yeah, because
You
that's
said
an
farm.
Orwell book.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is. I meant Animal
Well, maybe
Crossing.
he was interested in reading. I don't know.
I'm so sorry, but yeah, Animal Crossing is like if you're wanting to get into the Nintendo ecosystem again. I hear that game's a lot of fun right now. There's a lot of people playing it. There's a lot of cool like features that have been added to it.
Yeah, yeah. I've
So,
heard it's a good one from people that are in the know and have played Animal Crossing before.
yeah,
Another
it's not
thing
necessarily
to Another thing to think about though is that there's news out there that with this current social situation, there's a surprising lack of Nintendo Switch stock out there for people to buy,
Oh.
and prices are going up steeply on Switches.
Well, that's going to
I did not
happen
know.
with everything, really.
Yeah,
It might
Switches
be
and toilet
mitigated
paper.
by bigger companies because they've already got a backup of stock. But yeah,
Yeah,
if you are a Switch player sitting on the can with a roll of full roll of toilet paper, you are riding high,
yeah, dude.
Living the dream
and other people's dreams.
and other people's dreams.
Oh man. So what else do we have on our list?
Let's go to Spider-Man 2 leaks. In recent weeks, and I'm going to preface this by saying that I didn't actually read all the articles because I didn't want to be spoiled. necessarily, but there was a. Let me make sure I get the right place. Was it on Reddit?
There are a lot of leaks on Reddit.
I think it was on Reddit, but a Redditor posted a massive list that talked about Spider-Man 2 details. They said they got from an anonymous source, and according to everyone else, it seems or sounds or reads like it's feasible based on what happened at the end of Spider-Man 2. So it's kind of like, did someone actually receive this information? Like, is Spider-Man 2 going to be released this holiday season? Um, or did they just make some really good guesses after playing the game? You know?
Yeah, Spider-Man 2, uh, for as good of a game as Spider-Man 1 was, you could pretty much guarantee that there's going to be a sequel to that game.
Hmm. Oh yeah. I mean, it did so well.
Yeah, it did. And it was developed by a first-party Sony company. It would have had to have been because Spider-Man is owned by Sony. Oh man, I'm getting
They
into
could have
some
licensed it.
corporate BS here. Um, what I'm hoping
Yes.
out of that game is Spider-Gwen, but I don't know.
I would love Spider Gwen. Did you? Oh, this is a tangent. You guys don't even have wait. Only one of you has a Switch.
I have a
But
Switch.
in the Marvel Alliance game that came out for the Switch last year,
Yeah.
fun to play. You could play Peter, Miles, and Spider Gwen.
Dang, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it was fun.
Hmm.
Their moves were also different enough that it didn't feel like you were playing the same character. Uh, Worth it.
Nice.
Yeah, but that's the sequel I'm excited for. In more gaming news, Call of Duty Warzone hit 30 million players.
Wow.
That's pretty nuts. There are a few caveats that we have to mention here though.
Get it?
Call of Duty Warzone is a free game. It's a
Free to play. Yeah.
free to play battle royale game. And two, it is from Call of Duty. So it's got brand recognition and it's free. So they were bound to have pulled in quite a few people anyway.
Especially
Just
since they got a
like,
couple thousand people sitting around with nothing to do.
yeah, and that's the same way that if EA smacks a FIFA title on a brick and puts it in the stores, FIFA heads will buy it. So,
It's so true.
You're not lying.
The same thing with the Madden crowd.
yeah, really. Like, oh, it's so different. We get the updated roster. Did you pay like $60 like 3 months ago for the previous one? Yeah, but this one has the new roster. Like, dude, it's the same. It's literally the same game. They just moved the little name on the back of the guy's jersey to a different dude, like to a different team. Like that's it.
That's it.
Uh, uh, we need to move on before I go off on sports games.
Let's see. We can switch real quick to a little bit of anime news
Sure, if you want
with
to.
Bleach. Oh yeah, Bleach celebrating its 20th anniversary coming up. So there was some information releases about a new anime set in the Bleach universe, as well as the final arc
Yeah.
for the original Bleach series. Go ahead and take it away, Scorch.
Oh, okay. Well, Bleach was one of those animes, whatever you want to call it, that got me into anime in general. It was one of those things that I was able to use to bond with my cherished friends that I still am able to call friends. Um, and I really enjoyed the series as a whole back when I was, a scraggly peach fuzz on my face uh, teenager, right?
Yeah, it's
And
a fun series.
yeah, it was. And I enjoyed the characters and all that. And they left the series kind of at a good place as far as like storylines go. They were able to finish off an arc, but there wasn't really a whole lot of incentive, especially from the powers that be, to keep going on that series. What with the readership of Shonen Jump declining in popularity of Bleach. So they abandoned the series, which is kind of unfortunate because uh, the die-hard Bleach fans wanted the final arc, Thousand Year Blood War, to make it to anime. And it only took them, what, 15 years to decide that they were going to make the Thousand Year Blood War arc.
Hmm.
And I'm pretty happy about it returning. I don't know what the anime is going to be like now that it's so far away from the original series. I know that they have the same voice actorship on this project as they did the previous one. They confirmed Ichigo, Rukia, and Byakuya are going to be the same voice actors, which is going to be cool. But there are so many other characters in that show, and
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'm going to be very interested in where all they go with this, especially with Thousand Year Blood War arc being so centered around the Quincy's,
Oh.
and that the they have a couple of major Quincy characters that they have made no mention of the voice actor talent coming back and reprising their roles. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, it's not an absolute deal breaker, seeing as how it's been so long since the original series. But
Yeah.
yeah, and along with that, they also uh, mentioned that, like Vast Empires was saying, a new anime from the same universe and the same uh, creator of Bleach is going to be created called Burn the Witch, I believe.
That is
And
correct.
I know nothing about that series,
Me
so
neither.
it's going to be interesting.
Yep, I just watched the trailer. It looks like it's still in the universe that they are witches, and
Witches.
yeah, but it just just seeing the trailer reminded me how much I enjoyed. Oh gosh, I can't remember the manga artist's name right now, but how much
TT
I enjoyed his
Kubo.
art style. Thank you. How much I liked his art style.
Yeah, his art style is really unique.
Yeah, it's really clean. I
Yeah,
really loved his character design.
good dark
Um,
lines.
mhm. And I'm very interested in seeing it.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Did you ever watch a whole lot of Bleach, Vest? Is that something you did?
dude, dude. I watched it until I couldn't watch anymore, and then I would. It was like Naruto for me for a while, where I would just come back every 100 chapters or so, and just make sure that my favorite characters were still alive.
Just checking in on him.
You guys like, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
Is Ikaka still alive? Okay, all right, we're good. We're good. But yeah, I watched a lot of Bleach.
Luckily, I don't think they ever pulled a Neji or anything like that and
Oh
like
god.
Yeah, yeah, that one
murderize
was.
somebody's favorite character.
Oh
Oh
yeah,
man. So
that still
bad.
hurts. Still hurts.
Oh man.
Still hurts.
Yeah, never watched
Uh,
it. Hey, are we looking for another chicken? Yeah, we are looking for another chicken.
I only brought one
I
chicken.
I got a chicken. I got a couple chickens over here.
Oh, well I only brought in one, so
Okay. Well, we need
in a
two.
quick gaming news, the Gearbox's co-founder Landon Montgomery um, passed away over the week.
mm,
Yes, he
yes.
did. He will be missed.
And they Gearbox official like released an official statement on their website and Twitter. Excuse me, Twitter. Um, and
Doop, doop.
Landon was a part of many, many, many games that came out of the studio. Uh,
He worked on quite. He was in quite a few companies before he founded Gearbox too. He worked partially in BioWare for a little while. I know. Um, he worked well in a lot of notable places. I'm kind of drawing a blank right now,
Yeah.
but
I I do recall that he worked on one of the Tony Hawk games. I know he worked on a Halo game, and he worked with the Half-Life series.
oh, okay. Half-Life series is good for those of you keeping track from decades old games that you may want to revisit now that you have Steam.
And lots of time.
Yes, play some Half-Life. It's a great series. And now I don't know where to go.
Fistmaster.
Listmaster, where are you?
I'm here. I'm just making sure.
I'm lost.
No, no, no. I think we're coming to the end, actually, of
Wow.
the list. I don't have another topic.
Hmm. I feel like this one was too quick.
I do too. That's why I was like, wait
But
a
our
minute,
other
is
ones
this
have
the
been
end of
pretty
the
long,
list?
so I think it's a balance.
That's true. I don't know. Do you feel like shitting on Anthem a little bit?
I mean, I'm always down to rain on some parades.
Let's talk about how Destiny was crap.
I mean, we can go for days,
Yeah,
Oh, I know, that's
we
the
have.
thing.
It's out there on the internet.
Days.
years.
Oh man. Oh,
So
well,
many
if we
things.
really don't have anything, I don't really think we should like burn time.
Mm-mm. Let's
All
keep it
right.
moving, y'all.
Well, I guess this is shorty from us. We don't usually do short ones, but it seems as if we're out of topics right now. And the topics that we also have lined up are far too long and should be their own podcasts right now.
Mm, quite.
So we will leave that as it is and go ahead and sign off. We'll see you guys later. Bye.
Laters.